Okay, awesome. All right. So, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me. I'd like to start with a bit of an overview. So very quickly, I'm Hugh Thomas at Talent Web Property Recruitment. I'm sitting with Stephen Ellis, CEO of Knight Frank Australia. Stephen, could you please give me an overview of your current role within the business and how you came to join Knight Frank?
Okay, so my current role is obviously CEO, and that basically is overseeing the whole of the Australian business. I do actually have a COO who looks after the operational side of the business.
Yeah.
So I see my role within the business is very much building the team.
Yeah.
Having client relationships at a senior level, and opening doors at a senior level, and determining with the management of the business the strategy going forward. And that really is my role in a nutshell. How I came to join Knight Frank, I actually wasn't really looking for a job. I was actually approached by DZ. They said, "Will you come and talk to us at Knight Frank?"
Oh, really?
And so I just, one thing led on to another, and I ended up at Knight Frank.
There you go. Awesome. And how long ago was that? That was
4 years ago.
4 years ago. And prior to that, you were
prior to that, I had my own business with a couple of other guys. We were endeavouring to set up a funds management business in data centres. We set that business up in 2007, backed by Thakral. 2008.
Thakral Holdings, Singaporean guys.
2008, 2009. Difficult years. You know, I got people say, "Yes, I'll invest in it." You get the commitment, you get the product, I'll invest in it. I got people who said, "I'm interested in moving into the facility, but you got to build it, and then I'll commit to it." So it was a catch-22, and we never really got it off the ground. We bought a couple of sites, and prior to that,
I think that sort of market at that period of time was very hard in terms of sort of raising capital and all that. It's diabolical. The opposite to now. Cool. All right. So the other thing I wanted to ask, what are the biggest industry challenges, trends affecting Knight Frank and the wider property industry that you've seen at the moment?
The biggest industry challenge and trends. Well, Knight Frank has got a global strategy that revolves around 4 pillars. Valuations, residential, capital markets, and office agency. And we are building that business around the globe. That's not to say industrial and property management aren't important. In fact, for Australia, they're very important. But globally, we're trying to build a consistent service in all those areas around the globe. So the challenge for me is to deliver that. The biggest challenge for me right now is the residential piece, because residential is such a strong part of Knight Frank's global business.
Especially for the UK as well.
Yet in Australia, it is such a small part of our business. And of course, people come to us and they say, "Hey, look, I've got a house in Point Piper, or I want to buy a house in Mossman. Can you help?" And we sort of say, "Well, actually, we don't do that stuff." And it's sort of totally contradictory to what we do in globally. The UK. From an industry perspective, the biggest challenge at the moment, really, I suppose, is getting hold of assets for sale. This game is all about control of stock. There are plenty of buyers out there. No problem with buyers. They're coming from all parts of the world because the yields are high. The spread between yields and cost of funds is broader than any other market. And Australia, being seen as one of the safe havens, is actually attracting a lot of capital. Contrary to that, on the other flip side of that, you've got the leasing market, which is in a completely different sphere. Companies are taking time to build their businesses. We've got activity-based working, which is companies reducing
space.
Demand. Sydney is one market, which everybody looks at Sydney and says, "Oh, that typifies what's happening in Australia." The fact of the matter is that Brisbane,
totally disconnected from each other,
are really struggling and finding it tough. But the investment funds are continuing to come through, and I think in time that will only start to sort of kick those markets.
What's your view on how long Brisbane will take to get sorted out, just generally as a market?
it's already beginning to happen in the investments
in the private sort of side a little bit.
Well, no, I think that a lot of the Chinese money or foreign money who initially come to Sydney, they're now looking at opportunities elsewhere. We're now seeing, some of the Australian REITs, some of the Australian super funds looking at markets outside Sydney. We just sold the Sachin Funds portfolio in Adelaide for a German fund to Lend-Lease.
That's surprising.
There were bidders coming from all over the place. I mean, 3 years ago, you mentioned Adelaide. They would say, why would I invest in Adelaide? You know, so they're looking at the other markets in Brisbane.
It's because there's just such a lack of assets out there at the moment. There's so much capital.
That's right,
and rolling around.
We look at the global playing field and say there's a lot of capital market. In Australia, we've got the superannuation industry, which is about 1.4 trillion under management.
Yep.
That's going to be 3.3 trillion by 2020, and it's going to be about over 7 trillion by 2030. And if you said, look, just 10% goes into the property market, the market's not big enough.
Yep.
So there needs to be some way to find a home.
Diversification of assets to sort of to go after. Yeah. Cool. Stephen, would you be able to go into some detail, or some initiatives, priorities that you're driving internally at Knight Frank in regards to sort of that change? I mean, you covered that a bit in terms of the sort of residential side.
So, I mean, for me, it's about getting the right people into the business. So, yes, we're building it around that framework, the 4 pillars, but we've also got, as I said, industrial and property management, asset management services are also a very important part of the business. But it's all around people. The whole business around people, and it's getting the right people into the business in the right positions. And my primary focus when I joined the business was to actually get the people who work directly closest to me, those people in position, and then get them to do likewise and filter down through the business. For me, it's creating the right culture, a culture which encourages success, but also encourages fun at the same time. Now, I know all companies say the same thing, but one of the great things for me about Knight Frank is that we don't have those sort of quarterly or monthly pressures imposed on us by the public environment. Where the revenue coming from this month. We're actually looking to grow the business, but in an orderly fashion. We want to be different to CBRE and Jones Lang. We've got the platform. It's a smaller platform. There's fewer people, so we can be more intimate with one another. We can move, hopefully, more quickly within the market, and be more personal with our clients. And that's really what we're trying to do. It's about creating the right HR processes within the business. And agreeing effectively the terms of engagement, the way that we actually work with each other. So those are the principal challenges.
Stephen, would you be able to add a few comments about your career and reflection? So critical moments, decisions which led to you climbing the ladder, so to speak.
So I joined. When I came here, I came with Jones Lang. I used to work for a company called Hillier Parker in the UK. And I came over in 82, beginning of 82, from the UK, recruited in the UK by Jones Lang. Came over, worked in the investment department for a couple of years, and then I actually just saw an advert in the paper from Richard Ellis, come and join us, they're looking for people. And I thought, well, Richard's a big name in the UK. They don't really have a big name in Australia yet. There must be opportunities. So I joined Richard Ellis, and at that time, Richard Ellis in Australia or Richard Ellis in New South Wales was a franchise business, and I got some shares, albeit very small amount of shares in that business over time. And then Richard Ellis International, which was the international arm partnership outside the UK, which was wanted to bring all the partners under one umbrella, and they did an exchange of my shares for cash and shares in the international partnership. So that was a a telling moment? Was it significant? Probably not. I mean, I was just going through life at the time, married, kids. There were other focuses going on in your life. And then in the mid 90s, I was given the role of running North Sydney, which actually probably turned out to be a turning point for me in actually learning to manage and run a business.
Yep.
And there were only 22 of us, but there was a small team, and we were able to make that team extremely profitable. How we were doing it, I don't know at the time, but it was really about having fun, making sure that people got on with each other, and keeping everybody aligned. And it really, in my mind, it was just as simple as that.
Sometimes it is that simple, isn't it?
Business is not complicated.
Yep.
And then CBs came along and bought Rich Ellis, and they brought in an American over here called Bill Chillingworth, who gave us some insight into running a business, because we were just drifting. One year we'd go on to the next. There was no where's
strategic, plan.
And he came in and gave us some real insight. This is what running a business is about. And the Americans are very good at running businesses. And he empowered me to look after not just North Sydney, but also Adelaide and Canberra businesses. And I made some strategic changes in that. I changed the MDs in both of those locations. People who I could get on with, people who had the same sort of, I suppose, aspirations, synergies to what I was thinking. And that started to bear fruit. And when Bill returned to the States, he nominated me to be his successor.
Yep.
And that was a defining moment, obviously, to become CEO of CBRE. At the time was about bigger than Knight Frank is now. And we obviously continued to go on that journey. Anyway, for 4 years we continued to grow that business, and then in 2006, and I took over responsibility of GCS at the time. And I think probably at that moment that was probably telling me that maybe it's time to move on and do something else. And a friend of mine, I've always thought about, well, I don't want to be an agent coming to the end of my life, so what if I tried something else? And I didn't. So I thought, let's go into a couple of the other guys I was working with. CBs were very generous. They said, look, you guys can go together, we won't hold you to any restraints, no problem, you're going to set up a funds management business in this area. And so then I got into that area, and I suppose the rest of the story is what I've all related to.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. When you're recruiting for Knight Frank, what types of behaviour skills do you look for in new candidates?
People who have got the right attitude.
Yep.
People who I believe fit in and understand the aspirations of the business. And people have got a level of professionalism to deliver what we're trying to deliver. They've got to be team players, and they've obviously got to have a good reputation in the marketplace.
Yep.
So I brought in people critical around me at the time was Richard Horn, Aaron McGee, John Priest, just to name a few.
Yep. Okay. What are your thoughts on the state of the current economy in relation to candidate quality? How's that changed, say, since you've been in Australia?
Oh, since it's been in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the real estate industry has changed tremendously. Still got some way to go, but it's changed tremendously. When I first arrived here, the people who worked in the industry were, you can't get a job, go into real estate. I mean, it was very much that sort of thing. The level of professionalism, the level of knowledge, and I would say it's actually going a step up now, as we've seen. They're becoming much more analytical. You've got to be a lot more aware. Information is all out there, so you've got to have an element of professionalism to add value. And in the old days, it's all about just putting two and two together. You know, I know him. He wants to buy this property. There was no sophistication in it. That's the price. That's the return. Buy it. There's the space. Lease it. It was nothing more complicated than that. And look, there are still people operating in that way, and there's some very successful people operating in that way. But I think the bigger firms like Knight Frank and Colliers and CBRE and the like, they're actually looking to take the business further up the value add chain, much in the same way as perhaps Macquarie Bank and the like did 10 years ago.
Yeah, excellent. What are the biggest challenges to dealing with the modern internet-savvy, job-hopping young workforce? How's that sort of affected things, or how have you seen that change?
Look, I've got 3 sons in that sort of era, and I think that all I can say is, from a leader's perspective, you've got to be flexible and appreciate changes upon us. And even though I would not say that I would understand the ins and outs of things, I have to recognise that things are being done differently, and listen to those people around me who know something about it and trust those people. I can only bring myself up to speed to a certain level. But IT in particular is playing a much bigger part in our industry. And we're having to invest much more time and money in that area. And the way that the operators work is that they expect to have a lot more autonomy, a lot more freedom.
A lot more kind of buy-in in terms of sort of decision making a little bit as well.
Look, Australia very much so. I mean, Australia's like that. People like to have autonomy. Everybody likes to be involved in decisions.
Given sort of power, effectively, over there.
But if we're going to move opposites, say, everybody wants to be part of that decision process. It's not a question. And Australia's very much like that. It's a very flat structure. They hate hierarchy. Whereas you go to the States, and the States is much more hierarchical than it is here.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, that's probably everything for today. So, thanks so much for taking the time to do that. That was Stephen Ellis, CEO of Knight Frank. Really appreciate that.